In the misty heart of the Blue Ridge Mountains lived a man named Silas, a recluse known more for his hulking frame and untamed beard than for his words. The townspeople whispered tales about him: a hermit, a beast, a man who had turned his back on the world. So when the wealthy, arrogant Winchester family needed to secure a land deal with Silas, they devised a plan they found endlessly amusing. Their deal required a marriage alliance, a tradition as old as the mountains themselves. But instead of offering one of their prized beautiful daughters, they chose to send Alara. Alara was the forgotten Winchester, the quiet niece they had taken in after her parents passed. They called her plain, mousy, and worst of all, ugly. Her spirit, once bright, had been dimmed by their constant cruelty. Sending her to the mountain beast was their ultimate joke, a way to rid themselves of a burden and mock the man they feared. Alara, with no choice and a heart heavy with dread, packed her few belongings and made the lonely trek up the winding mountain path to meet her fate. She expected a monster, a brute who would treat her with the same disdain she'd always known. But the man who greeted her at the door of the rustic cabin was not the beast of her nightmares. Silas was large, yes, and his eyes were wary, but they held a deep-seated gentleness, a quiet curiosity. He didn't sneer or laugh. He simply looked at her, truly looked, and saw not the ugly daughter, but a young woman with fear and sorrow in her eyes. He offered her a warm meal and a seat by the fire, his silence more comforting than any words she had ever heard. Days turned into weeks. Alara, expecting cruelty, found only kindness. Silas taught her the language of the forest, the names of the wild flowers, the calls of the birds, the secrets of the streams. He showed her how to carve wood, his large, rough hands moving with surprising grace. He never asked about her past, never mentioned her family's cruel reputation. He simply accepted her. In his quiet presence, Alara began to unfold. The constant tension in her shoulders eased, and a timid smile began to grace her lips. She discovered that Silas wasn't a brute. He was a poet who couldn't write, a musician who played the fiddle for the trees, a man with a soul as deep and ancient as the mountains he called home. He had retreated from the world not out of hate, but because its noise and cruelty were too much for his gentle heart to bear. He saw beauty not in polished surfaces, but in the resilience of a wildflower growing through a crack in a rock. One evening, as they sat on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and purple, Alara found her voice. She told him about her family, about the years of being called ugly and worthless. She spoke of the joke they thought they were playing on him. Silas listened, his expression unreadable in the fading light. When she finished, tears streaming down her face, he reached out a calloused hand and gently wiped one away. "They don't know what ugly is," he said, his voice a low rumble. "Ugly is a soul that finds joy in another's pain. What I see in front of me is the most beautiful thing these mountains have ever held." In that moment, Alara understood. Her family's joke had backfired in the most spectacular way. They had sent her their unwanted burden to a man they despised, thinking they were punishing them both. But in doing so, they had inadvertently given them both the one thing they desperately needed: someone who saw them for who they truly were. Silas didn't see an ugly daughter. He saw Alara, a woman with a kind heart and a resilient spirit. And Alara didn't see a mountain beast. She saw Silas, a man whose quiet strength and gentle soul were a haven. News of their contentment eventually trickled down the mountain. The Winchesters were baffled, then enraged. Their cruel joke had turned into a story of unexpected love, making them the fools of the tale. They sent a messenger demanding Alara's return, claiming the deal was off. Alara stood on the porch, Silas by her side, and looked down at the messenger. For the first time in her life, she felt powerful. "Tell them," she said, her voice clear and strong, "that I have found my home. I am not coming back." The messenger left, and as his figure disappeared down the path, Alara turned to Silas. The man who was supposed to be her punishment was her salvation. The cabin that was supposed to be her prison was her sanctuary. She had been sent as a cruel joke, but she had found a life more beautiful than she could have ever imagined. The Winchesters thought they were sending their ugly daughter to a monster, but in reality, they had sent her to the only man in the world who could see her true beauty, and in doing so, allowed her to finally see it in herself. She was everything the mountain man had ever wanted, and he was everything she had ever needed. They had found their own paradise, built not on land deals or family pride, but on the simple, profound truth of two souls recognizing each other. The mountains kept their secrets, and the happiest one of all was the love that blossomed from a foundation of cruelty, proving that beauty is not what others see, but what the heart feels. Thanks for watching, and be sure to follow for more stories like this.